Hey everyone, so today I decided to talk about something I've been carrying for a while, and that I'm tired of keeping to myself. There are days when I wake up and the first thing I feel is a weight, a tiredness that doesn't come from work or lack of sleep. It's an internal exhaustion, you know? It comes from doing things on autopilot without any real desire. I do things because I have to, because I'm required to, not because I want to. And this gap between having to and wanting to has been growing inside me to the point where it's impossible to ignore. You reach a point where you stop and realize you've been living in survival mode for much longer than you should. What weighs on me the most is that almost nothing at work truly satisfies me. I'm not talking about laziness or lack of effort, because I've worked quite hard over the years. I'm talking about a lack of connection with what I do, a feeling that it has nothing to do with me. I wake up, follow the routine, deliver what needs to be delivered, and at the end of the day, I feel like I did it all on autopilot, without ever truly being present. The things I actually like doing, the things that give me genuine pleasure, always get pushed to later or dismissed as a waste of time. Society treats leisure and pleasure as luxuries, as if enjoying something without a financial return were irresponsible, and we end up internalizing that without even noticing. The only things that actually make me feel something are exactly what people usually call unproductive. But those things are what keep me balanced. They are what allow me to tolerate the rest of the week. Without them, I simply wouldn't function. The problem is they don't pay the bills, they don't build a resume, and they don't generate a visible return. So they always come second, squeezed between obligations. And when you live like this for too long, accumulating more obligation than pleasure, the fatigue starts to hit differently. It's not physical, it's the burnout of someone who knows they're living the wrong life but doesn't know how to change it. I'm not that old, I'm nearly 30, but honestly, this hits harder than I expected. It's not a dramatic crisis, but it's a real assessment of where I've ended up versus where I thought I'd be. When you look back and see the years go by and you realize that a huge chunk of them was spent doing what was expected of you rather than what you wanted for yourself, it's hard not to feel that weight. It's not the kind of regret that paralyzes you, but it's an uncomfortable awareness that time has passed and some windows have closed. It messes with your head in a quiet but constant way. If I knew at 18 what I know today, a lot of things would have been different. I'm not just talking about information or knowing more theory. I'm talking about action, consistency, and not waiting for the perfect moment to start. When you're young, you think you have time for everything and that opportunities will just keep popping up. But the truth is that some windows stay open for a very short time, and if you don't act while they're open, they shut. I was the person who stayed looking through the window without going in, waiting for better conditions that sometimes never came. Today, I understand that consistency and discipline are worth more than talent or luck, and that taking imperfect action is always better than planning and never moving. One thing I learned the hard way was to be more careful about who I share my plans and dreams with. When you're excited about something and you share it with those close to you, you expect support, validation, or someone to be excited with you. But that's not always what happens. Sometimes the person doesn't mean any harm, but a comment at the wrong time, but does that really work? Or you tried that before and it didn't go well, can be enough to make you give up before you even start. I've walked away from things that might have worked out because I listened too early to the opinion of someone who didn't believe. Today, I process things on my own for a while before opening up to anyone.
There is a huge difference between someone who truly supports you and someone who, intentionally or not, sabotages what you were building. And the problem is that often these people are exactly the ones you love and trust the most. It's not that they want to see you fail, but they project their own fears onto your plans, or they simply can't see what you see. When you are still in a fragile stage with an idea, any headwind can knock it down. I've learned to filter who I talk to about what I'm building, not out of arrogance, but for self-preservation. Not everyone needs to know everything before you have proof that it's working. But I'll go back to the beginning because I think it's important to be honest about this. The tiredness I feel isn't from overworking, it's from doing things that make no sense to me while the things that would make sense are left behind. It's waking up knowing the day will be a sequence of tasks that I complete but that don't belong to me. It's feeling like I'm spending all my energy somewhere else, and when there's a little left for me, I no longer have the drive to do what I'd actually like to do. This cycle is silent and it builds up. From the outside, it looks like everything is working because obligations are being met. On the inside, it's a constant feeling of being in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. I'm also the kind of person who is always available to help others. I learn to listen, to give advice, to be there when someone needs me. But there's a cost to that, which took me a long time to realize. When you are always in support mode for everyone else, you start to neglect what you need, and the people around you get so used to your availability that they don't notice when you're exhausted. You become a pillar of stability for others, but inside you are accumulating things you never process because you never stop to do so. It's a hard pattern to break because part of you feels like stopping being available is abandoning those who depend on you. There are days when I get home and I don't want to talk to anyone, I don't want to see anything, I don't want to be responsible for anything for a few hours. It's not drama, it's just the real exhaustion of someone who spent the whole day managing things and people. The problem is that this need to switch off is sometimes interpreted as isolation or being in a bad mood, when in reality, it's just a boundary being requested. And then you feel bad for needing that space, as if it were selfish to want time for yourself. We were taught that being available all the time is a virtue, but no one told us it comes with a price that gets collected bit by bit. Social media doesn't help with this. You open your phone after a heavy day and all you see is everyone apparently doing great, being productive and feeling fulfilled. Someone is launching a project, someone else is traveling, everyone is celebrating something. And there you are, tired, with no energy left, and the comparison hits you without warning. I know it's an illusion. I know people only post what's working out, but the brain doesn't process that rationally when you're already at your limit. The result is that you end the day feeling like you're falling behind without a clear reference of where you're supposed to be. But what bothers me most isn't even the comparison itself. It's the feeling that time is passing and I'm still stuck in the same cycle. You wake up, meet your obligations, try to squeeze in a moment for yourself, and at the end of the day, very little is changed. Weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and suddenly you're looking back trying to understand how you got here. It's not a catastrophe, life isn't broken, but it's also not what you imagined it would be. And living in this middle ground, without being miserable, but without being where you want to be, is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to those who don't feel it. I put a lot of pressure on myself for this too, which makes everything worse. I judge myself for not being more productive, for not having advanced further, for not having made certain decisions sooner. This pressure doesn't come from the outside, it comes from me, and it is relentless. You know that external pressure has a limit, but internal pressure never stops. It shows up when you're trying to relax, when you go to sleep, when you're in the middle of something else. It's you being your own harshest critic without a break. I'm learning to recognize when that voice appears and to not let it take up so much space, but it's still a long process.
One thing I've learned over time, which changes your perspective quite a bit, is that knowing is useless without acting. I spent years accumulating knowledge, understanding what I should do differently, analyzing mistakes, but analysis without action changes nothing. The difference between where I wanted to be and where I am isn't a lack of information, it's a lack of consistency in my actions. And consistency is the hardest part, because it doesn't depend on motivation, which comes and goes, but on discipline, which has to be built even when you don't feel like it. I learned this lesson late, but I learned it, and today it guides how I think about my next choices. I've also caught myself waiting for perfect conditions to start something, waiting to have more money, more time, more security, more clarity about the path. And while I waited, time passed and nothing started. Today I understand that ideal conditions rarely arrive ready-made, and that starting imperfectly is always better than not starting at all. What you build through constant imperfect action far outweighs what you plan with perfection but never execute. This seems obvious when you say it, but truly internalizing it and acting on it is much harder than it looks. I'm not saying I've found all the answers or that I'm in a place of total clarity. I'm in a process, trying to better understand what I truly want, what makes sense to me, and what I'm doing just out of inertia or the expectations of others. This process isn't linear. It's a lot of back and forth. Some days it feels like I'm moving forward, and other days it feels like I'm back at square one. But the simple fact that I'm doing this evaluation, that I'm no longer on total autopilot, is already different from where I was before. Awareness doesn't solve everything, but it's the first step toward any real change. What I want to leave you with from this text is simple. If you also feel like you're doing more of what you have to do than what you want to do, you're not alone. If you look back and feel like some choices could have been different, that's something many people carry. You don't need to turn it into a tragedy, but it also doesn't help to pretend it doesn't weigh on you. What you can do is be honest about where you are, stop judging yourself in a way that doesn't help, and start making smaller, more consistent decisions toward what makes more sense to you. It doesn't have to be an overnight life makeover, it just has to be real. You know, I feel more relieved having put this out there, because keeping these things inside weighs more than it needs to. We live in a world that demands a lot and gives back very little in terms of real satisfaction, and it's normal to feel that disconnect. What we can't do is stay on autopilot expecting things to change on their own. Take care of yourself, make the decisions you know you need to make, and stop putting off what's actually important to you. And that's it. Take care. Love you guys.